to the Aboriginal channel. On this episode, it's going to be part 2 to Indian DNA. We're going to Google Native American remains and see what comes up. So Native American remains. So it says right here, Native American burial site believed to be found in October of 2019. So about 3 to 4 months ago. Native American burial site believed to be found amid a freeway construction project. It says a road widening project has been indefinitely halted after a Native American burial site was believed to be discovered in a construction zone for the 405 freeway. That's in Orange County, California, down in the LA area. Construction workers who were excavating as part of the I-405 improvement project spotted the remains, including bones, on September 25th at an undisclosed location. According to Eric Carpenter of the Orange County Transit Authority, agency officials were prohibited by law from providing a location or description of a grave or sacred places. Now you see how they made it so important to make sure not to disclose the location. It says after consulting with Orange County Coroner's Office, the case was passed to the California Native American Heritage Commission, which will try to find out which tribe the remains might be linked to. It didn't say anything about getting the DNA sample from the remains and then matching them to the current people or whatnot. It says they're going to try to find out which tribe the remains might be linked to. That's hockey hole 101. My grandmother always used the word hockey hole when something was a foul, so I like to use it right now. That's hockey hole for sure. Here in an inquiry into the distinctive characteristics of the Aboriginal race of America from 1944, in the physical characteristics of the Indian, it says that these facts, however, are mere exceptions to a general rule and do not alter the peculiar physiognomy of the Indian, which is as undeviatingly characteristic as that of the Negro. For whether we see him in the athletic Carib or the stunted Cayman, in the dark Californian is the reason why I'm pointing this out, because right here in this book, it gives you a physical description of what the Indians in California, the Aboriginals, looked like. And he says that the Californians were dark skinned. And as we can see, these people right here are not dark. Yet this image right here of Indians of the Bay Area of San Francisco, California in 1816 look more like the dark-skinned Californians the book was talking about. Now, as we journey along this long and gruesome trail of Indian DNA, I must give you a preview of my Aboriginal replicas of America episodes. So right here we have what is called St. Augustine's Fortress. Now this monument, St. Augustine's Monument and statue, is located right here in the state of Florida of the Timucua tribe's territory. And if you remember, during the so-called Civil War, right in this area, there were battles. Now, if you do some research on this, it'll come back that a Spaniard built it. However, if you look at the mound artifacts and things of that nature, you'll know that Indians built this structure right here that still stands today. You'll know that all the different cubby shape, window shapes inside goes back to Indian structures. These portholes on the tops where people lay and shoot arrows on all angles go back to Indians. These diamond-shaped 4 points on the 4 corners all go back to Indian, as do these X's or crosses here at Louisiana State Prison. Those correlate back to American Indians, the shape. And as you can look inside of the building, there's a diamond shape sitting on top right here in the middle. That all goes back to American Indian symbology. It is said that this structure was impenetrable during all those battles, starting way back in maybe the 1600s, 1700s and forward. It was used by Indians in all those battles. This next structure we're going to look at is called Fort Morgan Bastion Fort. Fort Morgan is a historic masonry pentagonal bastion fort at the mouth of Mobile Bay, Alabama, United States, named for Revolutionary War hero Daniel Morgan. It was built on the site of the earlier Fort Bowyer, an earthen and stockade type fortification involved in the final land battles of the War of 1812. If you go do your research on that, you'll see that the War of 1812 ended in 1815, which bled right into the Creek War of 16, and then that bled right into the Seminole War, the first Seminole War. So all these Indians this whole time, starting in the 1700s and through the Civil War, through Apaches and Comanches and things, Dakotas were all fighting in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So they was fighting the whole time through. But I'm going to show you this structure. It was built by Indians. Now you see how it's built like the shape of a star or a pentagon or whatnot. And yes, the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. or whatnot is replicated after this right here. Now, if you study this image, you'll see how the earth raises up and comes to a point at angles. And that's how the Indians would build the earth up. So when you're looking around in the place that you live, for an example, if you look at the cemeteries, wherever you live at, and if it's on a hill, then you know what you need to know. But you can see how this structure here at Fort Morgan in Alabama is similar to the St. Augustine structure in Florida. Look at how the earth is made around the structure, which is very similar to the way these lines and the way the earth is made around this structure. Now, that's what connects all the tribes in those areas, the Muskogeans, pretty much. Millions of us lead back to these places right here. But I showed you this in particular because of the star shape and how stars are very, very part of Indian culture, and they're very much used in Indian symbology. As Indian culture, they believed in the creator and the creation. At the top, the tippy top of the creation was the sun, and stars are but small suns. That's why Indians would have names like brother of the sun, daughter of the sun, nephew of the sun, etc., etc. Now, before I go into the details of the star and how they connect to the gruesome trail of Indian DNA, I gotta stop and remind you guys of a previous video called The American Nations, where I said this. I read this from a book. The Americans had long before Columbus large cities built of stones, bricks, or wood with walls, ditches, temples, and palaces, some of which were of immense size and population. One of the Otolon near Calicut was 28 miles long, equal to Thebes, Babylon, and Kinoj in size and monument. So basically, I looked up right here on Google, Civil War destruction. And because if you've been watching videos, you know that my theory on this is that during the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln gave the go-ahead for the federal military to go around and basically killing up and destroying so-called black folks, so-called Indians, cities and palaces and made of brick, what I just read. They had all that stuff. So here is the images from Civil War destruction. And one of them I want to point out is first is this one right here. In it, you see 4 little so-called Indian kids right here sitting without their parents. And what they're sitting on is a big pillar. Now, that pillar we need to focus on real quick because it has some correlation. The first one that it draws my mind to is the Lincoln Memorial right here. As you can see, the pillar from that image with those little Indian kids sitting there on it, all destructed right here. As you see in the background, buildings are halfway gone. They've been shot with those cannonballs. The way they got Abraham Lincoln sitting in a chair back there behind the pillars is all a symbolic or allegorical message. But this is a replica of what Indians, so-called Indians, had before and after Europeans got to the Western Hemisphere. Now, when we go back to the Civil War destruction images and scroll down some, more of those pillars in destruction mode come up. Brick buildings destructed. But the pillars is what is very, very significant in this movie, which is very allegorical and symbolic. They have the leader of the biggest gang saying, "Can you dig it?" They were known for digging and building earthen structures. So they have him up here saying, "Can you dig it?" But see what he's standing in? A pyramid shaped or triangle shaped wooden thing standing up high with the wooden look like pillars coming down. That's all allegorical message. And he has gold in his mouth. That's another allegorical message right there. But the fact that he's standing up high is another significance because they said the mounds were used for spiritual or ceremonial, burial, and political. So the political use of the mounds were that sometimes those mounds went up over 100 feet in the air with its different complexes on how to get up there. But one man man would get up there and stand and talk to the people. That was part of politics and spirituality. So religion and state, basically. So around the country, you have replicas of that same political structure right here. Starting in DC, you have the Capitol building with the pillars, with where you can stand up at the top of the building, and then sort of like a dome-shaped replica mound where one man at the top is standing, as you can see right there. This one is the Pennsylvania State Capitol building, and as you can see, it has the pillars, the place where you can stand up on top of the building right there, and then the dome shape at the top with the one man up there standing. And if you look over at the State Capitol of Oregon building, you see the same thing, a replica palace with basically it would be like a platform mound at the top with a man standing there. Up there in Oregon, they have a gold man up there, as you can see right here, this gold man right here. See him up there holding the axe. And you look over in the state of Illinois at the State Capitol building, and this is it right here. As you can see, it doesn't, I don't believe it has a man up there, but it has the same shape and make with the pillars. But it's everywhere though. Now, if you look down in the Red River Parish in Louisiana, which was created in 1871 after the Civil War, the building is there. See the courthouse in Red River Parish, how it's built with all those windows and those pillars. Now, if you go look at the Coshata High School in Red River Parish, which wasn't created until after the Civil War in 1871, the high school there is pretty much a replica as well. This is Louisiana's state capitol building, but it's a replica of an Indian palace, American Indian palace. As you can see at the very top, it has the platform where someone could stand at politics. Going back over to the Civil War destruction images, you see stuff like this, where two brothers, two Indians, are in amongst a crowd of Europeans that's eyeballing them. Or this image right here, where you see these look like Europeans from the South shaking hands with these Europeans right here, look like from the North. It says Civil War on the Mississippi River timeline right here. They shaking hands. Another image of look like Southern and Northern Europeans shaking hands. Here's another image. It says what caused racism and segregation in the Southern U.S., particularly after the Civil War. You have look like Southern whites and then the Indians feuding with each other. And we know that particular riots took place in Memphis and New Orleans in 1866, and then all kinds of skirmishes and battles all up and through there. One in particularly in Texas called the Jaybird and Woodpecker War, where it said all of the so-called African Americans in the county fought the whites over politics, it said, but we know what it was really over. It was a continuation of Indians not going to be removed or told what to do or governed or any of that thing in their own land. That's what was going on. But we'll get back over here to looking at some of this Civil War destruction. See the buildings all beat up and collapsed. See how all the windows are portholes on the buildings? I believe that that was a so-called Indian form of architecture or the way they built things. Here's another photo right here of a building that has a lot of different windows or portholes. I'd say a bunch of Indians would have their own viewpoint where they can shoot those bow and arrows. Or later on, it became rifles and pistols, of course, during this war right here, which would have been in the 1860s. See all those portholes in there? I believe that that was how the Indians designed their buildings. There's, of course, you have the railroad tracks that are destructed. Building that stood back there that only some pillars stand now. See that train there? To get a better understanding of what I'm getting at, we have to look over in Seattle where it says Bill Spedal's Underground Tour is Seattle's most unusual attraction. A humorous stroll through intriguing subterranean storefronts and sidewalks, entombed when the city rebuilt on top of itself after the Great Fire of 1889. Seattle has an attraction. You go downtown Seattle, there's a whole city, I believe it's over 30 blocks of old city, the original city that existed there but was destructed in 1889 during the Great Fire. Now, the significance behind Seattle is we all know that there's a major so-called black population there. Now, if you go look at the wars or the Indian massacres, but right here you have the Yakima War. It happened in that area of Washington and Oregon between 1855 and 1858. The same exact years of the last Seminole Wars in Florida, 1855 to 1858. So at each end of the North America, there was Indians and U.S. military battling. So you go down here and look who it was between. It was between the U.S., all these different infantry, artillery, and Washington militia, Oregon militia, and then all these warriors, Yakima warriors, Walla Walla warriors, Umatilla warriors, Nesquilla warriors, Cayuse warriors. So they all fought up here, fighting for their land. One of the battles of that war was in Seattle. It says Battle of Seattle right here. And I showed you that just to correlate what I'm saying. They come in and built right on top of the place. They also say it's haunted down there. It should be noted that 3 years later, in 1861, the so-called Civil War took place, but we also had the California Indian Wars going on, and then the Apache Wars. Through the history books, which has all been a lie, so therefore, if it's a lie, then what's the truth? If it's a lie,